We are well placed to talk about these kinds of stories. One of our most downloaded scandal series ever was the Call Her Daddy fallout. Like, there's very few podcast duos in this world, and we are actually, some would say there's too many podcast duos, but we are.
I think there's lots of podcast duos.
We are one such podcasting duo.
Cece.
What do you make of this story?
It's always so meta when we talk about these things. You messaged me on the weekend, you're like, the podcast duo is collapsing all around us.
But like, it's so interesting. I feel this happens locally and internationally at least a handful of times a year.
Because it's a hard thing to do.
To be friends, working together, on microphone together, have that friendship monetized, have a lot of people invested in it.
I mean, I don't find it hard, and nor do you, and I'm not saying that to put us on some kind of pedestal. I think it's because you have to be really careful with it. You have to be deeply careful about the relationship, and you both have to come at it with intrinsically similar values, like that to the millimeter similar values. And we didn't check that off before we started. I mean, we knew we got along. We knew we had largely the same level of values. But I have friends who I have largely similar values to that I think if I was put in this position with, those millimeters would become deal breakers.
Well, the fascinating thing about this is that Grace and Bree have been friends since they were little.
Yeah.
Like, this friendship spans so many years, so much history, and yet it was only a couple of years of being on mic together before everything crumbled. And I know you've got the Zach Bryan stuff as part of it as well, but I actually think they're both alluding to this runs deeper than even that.
Yeah.
Runs deeper than just the relationship. I agree with you. I feel lucky all the time that you and I, by pure chance and coincidence, have ended up, I would say, 99 out of 100 identical approaches to things. If it was 95, it would be very hard to keep this together.
I think if it was 97, it would be very hard. I think that's what I've learned over the last 6.5, nearly 7 years. Generally, you have to leave meetings and social exchanges with exactly the same perspective on what happened. And if you don't, you can get into a bit of trouble. I mean, I think we're really lucky, and we've done a lot of work, those two things side by side, to ensure that's the case. And it's hard. It's hard. And I love the show that Grace and Bree largely put out. And I think a lot of people will be really sad about this. I think the other point here as well is this dynamic when it was someone's show for 2 years and then someone else joins it, that power dynamic.
The show's called Plan Bree.
It's deeply complicated.